My name is Melanie, and I'm 34 years old. I was standing in the grocery store parking lot when a handsome stranger approached me that Tuesday afternoon. He knew my name, said he had something difficult to tell me about my husband Brian. I should have walked away, but something in his eyes made me stop. What he showed me next shattered my perfect suburban life into a million pieces. But here's the thing: that stranger who destroyed my world, he ended up saving it. Before I continue with what happened that day, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how one conversation with a complete stranger in a parking lot changed absolutely everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my life, and surprisingly, about what real love actually looks like. I thought I had it all figured out. Every morning started the same way in our beautiful colonial home in Connecticut. Brian would kiss my forehead before heading to his corporate law office downtown, and I'd get ready for my shift at the dental practice where I worked 3 days a week. We'd been married for 12 years together, for 15. High school sweethearts who made it, or so everyone said. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. But isn't that always how it goes? You see what you want to see until someone forces your eyes open. Brian had started working late about 4 months ago, always on a big merger case that required absolute confidentiality. He couldn't even tell me the company names involved, he said. The man who used to share every detail of his day suddenly had nothing to say when he came home at 10 or 11 at night. Then there was the gym membership. Brian had never been one for exercise beyond our Sunday morning walks, but suddenly he needed a premium membership at the most expensive fitness club in town. Funny thing was, his body never changed. No new muscles, no weight loss, nothing. But he'd come home freshly showered, smelling like their expensive soap instead of sweat. The cologne was another thing. One day I noticed a new bottle on his dresser, something expensive and musky that I definitely hadn't bought him. When I asked about it, he said a client had given it to him as a thank you gift. A client. Right. What client gives cologne as a business gift? His laptop, which used to sit open on the kitchen counter while he worked from home on Fridays, suddenly required a password. His phone, which used to lay face up anywhere, was now always face down or in his pocket. When it buzzed, he'd check it quickly, then slip it away with this little smile that he thought I didn't notice. The weekend golf trips started 2 months ago. Every other Saturday, sometimes Sunday too, he'd leave before dawn with his clubs. But here's the thing about Brian: he's terrible at golf and hates losing. In 15 years, I'd seen him play maybe 5 times. Now suddenly he couldn't get enough of it. When I offered to join him at the club for lunch after his rounds, there was always a reason why I couldn't. They were playing a different course. The club was having maintenance. The restaurant was closed. My mother visited last month, and even she noticed something was off. We were having dinner and Brian excused himself 3 times to take calls. Work emergencies, he said. My mother, never one to hold her tongue, waited until he was gone to say, "Honey, is everything okay with you two?" I defended him, of course. The economy was tough, law firms were downsizing, he was under pressure to bill more hours. Inside, though, her question planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't quite shake. My best friend Amy was less subtle. We were having coffee last week when she just came out and said it. "Is Brian having a midlife crisis or something? Jim said he saw him at Nordstrom buying clothes, and since when does Brian shop for himself?" I laughed it off. Brian buying his own clothes was hardly evidence of anything except maybe growing up a little. But Amy was right about one thing: Brian had been refreshing his wardrobe. New suits that were more fitted Italian leather shoes instead of his comfortable loafers. Even new underwear that I discovered doing laundry. Boxer briefs instead of the boxers he'd worn since college. What we weren't telling anyone, what I thought was the real problem, was our fertility struggle. 3 years of trying 2 miscarriages and enough negative pregnancy tests to wallpaper a bathroom. The doctor said there was no medical reason, which somehow made it worse. Unexplained infertility, they called it. I called it cruel. Brian had been supportive at first, holding me when I cried, going to every appointment. But lately he seemed relieved when I got my period. No discussion, no comfort, just a nod and back to his laptop. I told myself he was protecting his heart too, that men process grief differently. That's why I was planning the surprise anniversary trip. 13 years was coming up next month, and I'd found this perfect cabin in Vermont. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just us and the mountains, and maybe a chance to remember why we fell in love in the first place. I'd already put the deposit down, arranged time off work, even bought some lingerie that I hoped might rekindle something between us. The morning I met Marcus, I was at the grocery store buying ingredients for Brian's favorite dinner. Coq au vin, the dish I made on our third anniversary when we were broke college kids, and I wanted to prove I could be sophisticated. I thought maybe if I made it again, it would remind him of simpler times when we were happy with just each other. I was loading the bags into my car thinking about whether to open the good wine or save it for the weekend, when I heard someone call my name. Not unusual in our small suburb, except I didn't recognize the voice. When I turned around, there was this man walking toward me with purpose, like he'd been waiting for me. He was handsome in that understated way, tall with dark hair going silver at the temples, wearing jeans and a navy Henley. But it was his expression that stopped me from immediately getting in my car. He looked nervous but determined, like someone about to jump off a cliff who's already decided the fall is worth it. "Melanie," he said again, and I nodded my hand instinctively, going to my purse. "I'm sorry to approach you like this. My name is Marcus, and I own the coffee shop on Main Street, The Daily Grind." I knew the place. Brian had mentioned going there for client meetings sometimes. It was one of those trendy spots with exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place that made a $4 coffee seem reasonable. "I've been debating whether to do this for weeks," Marcus continued, running a hand through his hair. "But if I were in your position, I'd want someone to tell me." My stomach dropped. There's something about those words, that tone, that makes your body know bad news is coming before your brain processes it. I set my grocery bags back in the cart, gripping the handle for support. "Tell me what—" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Marcus pulled out his phone and his hands were shaking slightly. "Your husband Brian. He comes to my shop every Tuesday and Thursday with someone who isn't you." The parking lot seemed to tilt. A woman with a toddler walked past us, the kids singing some cartoon song, and it felt surreal that the world was continuing while mine was stopping. "Maybe it's a colleague," I heard myself say. "He has lots of client meetings." Marcus's expression was so kind it made me want to cry. That's what I thought at first, but... He turned his phone toward me. "I recognized you from his wallpaper when he paid once. It's your family photo, right? You, him, and the golden retriever." I nodded. That photo was from last Christmas, one of the few recent pictures where we both looked genuinely happy. The woman he meets, her name is Stephanie. She's young, maybe 28, brunette. She works at his firm. I know because she's come in alone before, always orders an oat milk latte with extra foam. He was rambling now, clearly uncomfortable. They sit in the back corner booth, always the same spot. He started swiping through photos on his phone. They were discreet, taken from behind the counter, but clear enough. Brian's familiar blue suit, his hand covering Stephanie's on the table. Another of him tucking her hair behind her ear. One of them kissing, really kissing, not a friendly peck. The last one was the worst. Brian feeding her a bite of chocolate cake, the kind of intimate gesture he hadn't done with me in years. The timestamp on the photos went back 2 months. 8 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, while I was at work thinking he was in depositions or meeting with clients. My legs gave out and I sat down hard on the curb. The asphalt was hot through my dress, but I was shivering. Marcus crouched down beside me, not touching, just present. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I know this is horrible, but I was in your position 2 years ago. My fiancé was cheating with my brother, and everyone knew except me. When I finally found out, I wished anyone had told me sooner. Saved me from making plans with someone who was already gone." I thought about the Vermont cabin, the lingerie hidden in my dresser, the coq au vin ingredients in my car. My throat burned with unshed tears. "Why?" I asked, not even sure what I was asking. "Why tell me? Why Brian? Why her? Why now?" Marcus seemed to understand. "Because you come in sometimes alone, usually Monday mornings. You order a vanilla latte and sit by the window with a book. You always look, I don't know how to say this without sounding weird, but you look sad. Beautiful but sad. And then I see your husband with her, and they're using your sadness as their cover. It's not right. He stood up, pulled a business card from his wallet. I know this is a lot. If you want to talk, or if you need these photos for anything, just call me. Or come by the shop when they're not there. I make a mean espresso and sometimes caffeine helps with shock. I took the card with numb fingers. Marcus helped me stand, even reloaded my groceries while I stood there trying to remember how to breathe. Before he left, he said one more thing. Whatever you decide to do, just remember this isn't about you. It's about him. You didn't cause this, and you couldn't have prevented it. Some people are just broken in ways that have nothing to do with us. I sat in my car for an hour after he left, staring at those photos on my phone where I'd asked him to send them. In every picture, Brian looked happy. Not stressed, not tired, not grieving our fertility struggles. Just happy with someone who wasn't me. The strangest part. Beyond the pain and humiliation, I felt something else. Relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally someone had given me permission to exhale. The other shoe had dropped, and at least now I knew what I was dealing with. I drove home on autopilot, my mind cataloging every lie, every excuse, every time I'd push down my instincts because trusting Brian was easier than doubting him. Our house looked different when I pulled into the driveway. Same white colonial with black shutters, same manicured lawn. Brian paid someone else to maintain, but it felt like a stage set now. A pretty facade hiding an ugly truth. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Brian's coffee mug in the sink, his running shoes by the door that hadn't moved in weeks, the sticky note on the fridge reminding me about his fictional late meeting tonight. Thursday. Of course he had a late meeting on Thursday. I set down the groceries and walked through our house like a detective at a crime scene. Our wedding photo on the mantel, when had he stopped looking at me that way? The expensive watch I'd given him for his 30th birthday, was he wearing it with her, the king-sized bed we'd picked out together? How many nights had he lay there thinking about someone else? My laptop was on the kitchen counter and I opened our joint credit card statement. There they were. Charges I'd overlooked before. The daily grind. $42. $42 at a coffee shop. That's lunch for two. Maybe with dessert. Multiple charges at restaurants I'd never been to, always during work hours. A charge at Sephora that he'd said was a gift for his secretary's birthday. God, I was an idiot. The florist charges were particularly insulting. $80 here, $120, they're always on random weekdays. Not my birthday, not our anniversary, not Valentine's Day. When was the last time Brian had brought me flowers? I couldn't even remember. Then I found it the smoking gun hidden in his corporate card statement that he'd accidentally left on his desk. A charge at the Marriott downtown the middle of a Wednesday last month when he was supposedly at an all-day conference in Boston. $312. Not a conference room rental. A hotel room in our own city, while I was 15 minutes away thinking my husband was 3 hours north. I called his office, my hands surprisingly steady. Hi, Joan, it's Melanie Fitzgerald. Is Brian available? Joan, his secretary for the past 5 years, paused just a beat too long. Oh, Mrs. Fitzgerald. He stepped out for a meeting. Should I have him call you? When did he leave? I kept my voice light friendly. Around noon. He said he'd be back by 3. It was 2:45. Thanks, Joan. No message. I knew where he was. The daily grind was 12 minutes from his office, 15 if there was traffic. I grabbed my keys, then stopped. What was I going to do, make a scene? Throw coffee in his face like some daytime soap opera? Instead, I drove to the coffee shop and parked across the street. The daily grind had huge windows, the kind meant to attract customers with views of happy people enjoying overpriced caffeine. I could see them clearly in the back corner booth, just like Marcus had said. Stephanie was prettier than I'd expected. Not beautiful exactly, but young and fresh, in a way that made me acutely aware of the lines around my eyes, the gray roots I'd been meaning to touch up. She wore a fitted dress that showed off curves I'd lost to stress and fertility medications. Her laugh was bright and careless, the kind of laugh you have when you're not worried about mortgage payments, or aging parents, or empty wombs. Brian looked like he did when we first met. Animated, engaged, leaning forward to catch every word she said. He was wearing the new suit, the one I'd thought made him look sharp. Now I realized he hadn't bought it for the office. He'd bought it for her. I watched him feed her a bite of what looked like chocolate cake, the same gesture from Marcus's photo. She made a show of savoring it, and Brian's face lit up like he'd accomplished something important. When was the last time I'd seen him look proud of anything involving me? I took my own photos, better ones than Marcus had managed. Clear shots of Brian's hand on her thigh under the table, of him kissing her neck, when he thought no one was looking, of her playing with his wedding ring like it was a joke between them. The wedding ring I'd saved 6 months to buy when we were young and broke and thought love was enough. The ring he'd sworn to wear forever in front of God and our families and everyone who mattered to us. Now some paralegal was treating it like a toy, while my husband gazed at her like she hung the moon. I sat there until they left, watched them walk to their separate cars with lingering touches and promises I couldn't hear, but could read in their body language. Brian checked his phone, probably seeing my text from earlier about dinner, and I watched him type a response. 2 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Big development in the merger case. We'll be home late. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. The casual cruelty of those words hit harder than everything else. How many times had he typed them while sitting next to her? How many love yous had been followed by kisses meant for someone else? I drove home and sat in the driveway calling my sister Laura in California. She answered on the second ring. Mel, perfect timing. I just put the kids down for naps. How are you? Brian's having an affair. Silence. Then, that fucking bastard. I'm booking a flight right now. I'll kill him. No, first, I'll cut off his balls, then I'll kill him. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Laura had never liked Brian, had called him aggressively mediocre at our wedding, though she'd been drunk and apologized the next day. I have proof. Photos, credit card statements, everything. Good. Take him for everything in the divorce. The house, the cars, his precious golf clubs. He apparently doesn't use for golf. How did you know about the golf clubs? Please. Men having affairs always pretend to golf. It's like they all read the same cheating handbook. Where is he now? With her. He'll be home late working on a merger. I laughed, but it came out bitter. At least now I know which merger he's working on. That's disgusting. Do you want me to come out? I can be there tomorrow. Not yet. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. What do you mean, you're divorcing his cheating ass? That's what you're doing. But it wasn't that simple, was it? 12 years of marriage, a house with both our names on it, intertwined finances, shared friends who would inevitably pick sides. The fertility treatments we'd already paid for but hadn't used. The embryos frozen at the clinic that were technically both of ours. I have to go. He'll be home eventually, and I need to think. Mel, don't let him gaslight you. You have proof. You're not crazy, you're not imagining things, and this isn't your fault. After we hung up, I went inside and did something strange. I unpacked the groceries and started making the coq au vin, chopping vegetables, browning chicken, reducing wine. The familiar motions calmed my racing mind, gave my hands something to do besides shake. By the time Brian came home at 11, smelling of coffee and her perfume, the house was spotless, and I was in bed pretending to sleep. He showered for 20 minutes, washing off his guilt, then slipped into bed beside me. Mel, you awake, he whispered, his hand finding my hip. I kept my breathing even, fighting the urge to recoil from his touch. He sighed, rolled over, and within minutes was snoring softly. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how many nights I'd slept next to a stranger without knowing it. I woke up before dawn with a strange sense of clarity. Brian was still sleeping, one arm thrown over his head the way he always did. In sleep, he looked like the man I'd married, the one who'd promised to forsake all others. But people's faces don't change, just their hearts. I made breakfast like it was any other Friday. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh orange juice. Brian came downstairs adjusting his tie, the red one I'd bought him last Christmas. "Smells amazing, babe." He kissed my cheek, and I managed not to flinch. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I set his plate down, poured his coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream. "Big day today." "The usual. Depositions this morning, client meeting after lunch." The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. "Might be late again. This merger is killing me." "That's funny." I sat down with my own coffee, keeping my voice conversational. "Amy said she saw you downtown yesterday at lunch. I told her she must be mistaken since you were in depositions all day." His hand paused for just a second as he reached for his juice. "She probably saw someone who looked like me. You know Amy, she needs glasses but won't admit it." "Right. That must be it." I took a sip of coffee. "Oh, and your mom called yesterday. She wants to know if we can come for dinner Sunday." "Sure, whatever you want." He was scrolling through his phone now, probably texting Stephanie. "Hey, did you move my gym bag? Can't find it anywhere." "Haven't seen it. When's the last time you actually went to the gym?" He looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just wondering if we should cancel the membership if you're not using it. Save some money." "I use it. Just been busy with work." He stood up, leaving half his breakfast untouched. "I should go." "Brian." I pulled the printed photos from under my placemat and set them next to his coffee cup. "Sit down." The color drained from his face as he saw the first photo, him and Stephanie kissing in the coffee shop. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Mel, I can explain." "Please don't." I spread out the rest of the photos like playing cards. "I have more. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, the works. So whatever you're about to say, just don't." He sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. For a moment, he looked lost young, like the boy I'd fallen in love with in high school. Then his expression hardened. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, actually laughed. "Really? That's what you're going with? It's not what it looks like. You're not having an affair with your paralegal." "It's just, we connected. She understands the pressure I'm under at work. And I don't." "You're always sad, Melanie. Always talking about babies and treatments and cycles. Do you know how exhausting it is to come home to that every day?" The words hit like physical blows. "We've been trying to have a child. I thought you wanted that too." "I did. I do. But it's been 3 years and maybe we should accept it's not happening." "So you decided to practice making babies with someone else?" His face flushed. "That's not fair." "Fair." I stood up, my calm finally cracking. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy. Fair would have been counseling or separation, or even an honest divorce. Not sneaking around with someone barely out of law school while I'm at home planning anniversary trips to save our marriage." "You planned a trip?" "Vermont. The cabin you always talked about wanting to visit. Surprise." I threw the reservation confirmation at him. "Consider it canceled." He picked up the paper, and for a second I saw genuine regret flash across his face. Then he deflected again. "You've let yourself go, Mel. You wear the same scrubs every day, never do your hair anymore, and when's the last time we had sex?" 3 weeks ago. You were drunk and called me Stephanie, but I pretended not to notice." His mouth fell open. I hadn't meant to say that, had buried that particular humiliation deep, but there it was. "I didn't." "You did. And you want to know the pathetic part. I still finished, still pretended everything was fine, because I thought maybe if I tried harder, loved you more, you'd come back to me." We stared at each other across the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd slow danced at midnight on our 5th anniversary, where I'd told him about the first positive pregnancy test before we lost it 6 weeks later. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "How long, Brian?" 4 months. It started at the office Christmas party. The office Christmas party I'd skipped because of a stomach bug. I'd sent him with homemade cookies for his team, told him to have fun, not to worry about me. "Do you love her?" He looked away. "I don't know. Maybe." "Then go be with her. Pack your things and leave. You can't kick me out. This is my house too." I pulled out my phone, showed him the photos of the hotel charge on his corporate card. Fraud is a felony, Brian. Using company funds for personal expenses, especially for an affair with a subordinate. I wonder what the partners would think, what the bar association would say. You wouldn't. Try me. We faced off like strangers, and I realized that's what we'd become. Maybe what we'd always been, just two people playing house until one of us broke character. I'll pack a bag, he said finally. We can talk about this when you've calmed down. I am calm, and there's nothing to talk about. I'll have divorce papers drawn up. You can have your lawyer contact mine. Mel, we can work this out. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I wanted was a faithful husband. That ship has sailed, hit an iceberg, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. He stood there looking confused, like he'd expected tears and begging instead of cold resolve. This isn't you. No, this is exactly me. You just haven't been paying attention for the last 4 months. I picked up my coffee cup. Your bag's in the garage. I packed it last night while you were in the shower washing off your girlfriend's perfume. Take it and go. Where am I supposed to go? I'm sure Stephanie has a couch. Or maybe you can use some of those hotel points you've been racking up. He left, then grabbing the bag and slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the ghosts of our life together and waited to fall apart. Instead, I picked up Marcus's business card from where I'd left it on the counter. The edges were soft from my nervous folding and unfolding. On the back, he'd written his personal number and coffee helps. So does talking to someone who's been there. 3 days. I gave myself 3 days to wallow, to cry, to mourn the death of my marriage. Then I'd figure out what came next. Those 3 days passed in a blur of tissues, wine, and ignored phone calls from Brian. He cycled through every manipulation tactic: guilt, anger, love-bombing, threats, and back to guilt. His texts ranged from, "You're overreacting," to, "Please don't throw us away," to, "You'll regret this," to, "I'm sorry, I love you, she means nothing." My sister called every few hours to check in. Amy came over with ice cream and violent revenge fantasies. My mother flew in from Florida without asking, simply showing up with a suitcase and announcing she was staying as long as I needed her. "I never liked him," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like her signature White Shoulders perfume. His eyes were too close together. Never trust a man with close-set eyes. On the 4th day, I texted Marcus. "Is that coffee offer still good?" He responded within minutes. "Always. The shop or somewhere neutral." I thought about it. The shop was his territory, but it was also Brian and Stephanie's love nest. Somewhere else. Blue Moon Cafe on Elm, 10 o'clock. See you there. I spent too long getting ready. Then felt ridiculous for caring what I looked like. This wasn't a date. This was just coffee with the stranger who'd blown up my life. I settled on jeans and a sweater, something that said I was holding it together even if I wasn't. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 coffees waiting. He stood when he saw me, and there was something old-fashioned about the gesture that made my throat tight. "I ordered you a vanilla latte," he said. "From what I observed, that's your usual." You observed me. I sat down, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. Not in a creepy way. I just notice regular customers, and you're memorable. Because I look sad. Because you always tip 20%, even on a $3 coffee. You hold the door for everyone, and you read actual books instead of scrolling your phone. I didn't know what to say to that, so I took a sip of the latte. It was perfect. "How are you doing?" he asked, and something about the way he said it with genuine concern instead of morbid curiosity made me answer honestly. "I feel like I'm drowning and floating at the same time." Does that make sense? Perfect sense. That's exactly how I felt when I found out about Natalie and my brother. Your fiancé and your brother, that's next-level betrayal. Marcus smiled ruefully. 5 years together, engaged for 1. My brother was my best man-to-be. They'd been sleeping together for 6 months before the wedding. I found out 2 weeks before we were supposed to get married when I came home early from a bachelor party I didn't want in the first place. "What did you do?" After I punched my brother and broke his nose, canceled everything, moved across the country, started over. Haven't spoken to either of them since. Do you regret it? The only thing I regret is not seeing the signs sooner. David was always jealous of what I had, always trying to one-up me. And Natalie loved attention more than she loved me. I just didn't want to see it. We talked for 3 hours. Not just about our mutual betrayals, but about everything. Marcus had opened his coffee shop 2 years ago with his divorce settlement money, turning heartbreak into his dream business. He was 41, originally from Seattle, had a daughter in college who sided with him in the divorce. She actually thanked me, he said, laughing. Said she never liked her uncle anyway, and her mom was too high maintenance for our family. I told him about the fertility struggles, how Brian had gradually withdrawn as each month passed without success. How I'd blamed myself, thinking if I could just give him a child, he'd love me again. That's not how love works, Marcus said gently. Real love doesn't have conditions or expiration dates. I'm starting to figure that out. He asked about my work, my interests outside of being Brian's wife. It was embarrassing how hard it was to answer. When had I stopped being my own person? I used to paint, I admitted. Watercolors, mostly landscapes. Haven't touched a brush in years. Why not? Brian thought it was messy. Too many supplies cluttering up the house. Marcus's expression darkened. Let me guess, his golf clubs didn't count as clutter. Those were an investment in his career. Client relationship building. Right, and your art was just a silly hobby. Put like that, it sounded as absurd as it was. I guess I'll have plenty of time to paint now. Silver lining. Marcus raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. To rediscovering ourselves. I clinked my cup against his, and when our eyes met, something passed between us. Not quite attraction, not yet, but possibility. The kind of spark that makes you remember you're still alive under all the hurt. This is probably inappropriate, Marcus said. But I need to tell you something. That day I saw you in the parking lot. It wasn't the first time I'd wanted to talk to you. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? You came into my shop alone about 6 months ago, ordered a vanilla latte and sat by the window reading. I think it was a Murakami novel. You looked so content, so absorbed in your book. I wanted to ask what you were reading, strike up a conversation, but then I saw your wedding ring. You noticed me 6 months ago. I notice you every time you come in. Even started stocking that particular vanilla syrup you like, the Madagascar one that costs twice as much as the regular. I stared at him, this man who'd paid attention to my coffee preferences while my husband was forgetting my birthday. Then Brian started coming in with Stephanie, and I realized the sad, beautiful woman with the good books was married to an idiot who didn't appreciate what he had. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I know you deserve better than someone who makes you look that sad when you think no one's watching. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between us. This is complicated, I said finally. Incredibly complicated. You're going through a divorce, I'm the messenger who told you about the affair, and we barely know each other. But I'd like to know you, when you're ready, if you're ever ready. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. I thought about Brian, probably with Stephanie right now, telling her his wife was crazy and vindictive. I thought about 12 years of making myself smaller to fit into his life. I thought about the watercolors gathering dust in the garage. I'm not ready for anything romantic, I said carefully. I might not be for a long time. I'm not asking for romance. I'm asking if you'd like to learn how to make latte art. Completely platonic coffee education. I teach a class at the shop after hours on Wednesdays. Just coffee. Just coffee. Though I should warn you, I also make an excellent chocolate croissant, and I've been known to share them with students who show exceptional foaming technique. Despite everything, I laughed. Really laughed, not the polite social laugh I'd perfected over years of corporate dinners. Okay, Wednesday. Coffee education. Platonic foam art. It's a date. Sorry, not a date. A scheduled educational experience. We left the cafe together, and Marcus walked me to my car. Melanie. Whatever happens with Brian, with the divorce, with everything, You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be free. As I drove home, I thought about freedom. Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. Free from Brian's criticism, his absence, his lies. Free to paint, to read, to drink overpriced coffee without justifying the expense. Free to discover who Melanie was when she wasn't trying to be someone's perfect wife. My phone buzzed with another text from Brian. Can we talk? I made a mistake. She means nothing. I deleted it without responding and called a divorce lawyer instead. The next 2 months were a masterclass in how ugly divorce could get. Brian fought me on everything: the house, the cars, even the dinner plates we'd received as wedding gifts. His lawyer, a shark in a suit named Richard Colson, painted me as an vindictive wife who'd driven her husband into another woman's arms with my obsession with having children. My lawyer, Susan Martinez, whom Marcus's friend had recommended, was even sharper. She had a gift for turning Brian's narratives against him. Mrs. Fitzgerald wanted children. Mr. Fitzgerald agreed to fertility treatments, then abandoned his wife emotionally while conducting an affair with a subordinate at his law firm. We have documentation of misused corporate funds and evidence of financial deception. Would you like to discuss the definition of vindictive, Mr. Colson? The Wednesday coffee lessons with Marcus became my anchor. Every week I'd arrive at the daily grind after closing and he'd teach me something new. How to steam milk to the perfect microfoam consistency. The difference between a cortado and a Gibraltar. Why water temperature mattered more than most people realized. But really, we talked about everything and nothing. His daughter Emma studying psychology at Boston University. My brother Tom in Chicago, who'd called Brian a series of creative expletives when he heard about the affair. The books we loved, the movies that made us cry the way coffee could be meditation if you approached it right. The key is intention, Marcus said one evening, guiding my hand as I poured milk into espresso. Every movement should be deliberate. No rushing, no forcing. Just presence. Our hands touched and neither of us pulled away immediately. The attraction I'd been trying to ignore flared to life, warm and insistent. But Marcus, true to his word, stepped back. You're getting good at this. Pretty soon you won't need lessons anymore. Maybe I just like the company, I said, then blushed at my forwardness. The company likes you too, he said softly. Very much. We stood there in his coffee shop, surrounded by the smell of roasted beans and possibility, and I wanted so badly to kiss him, to step forward and close the distance between us. But I wasn't ready. My divorce wasn't final, my heart was still a construction zone, and Marcus deserved better than being a rebound. So we kept to coffee and conversation, even as the tension between us grew thicker than the foam on a cappuccino. Meanwhile, Brian was falling apart. Stephanie had dumped him when she found out he was still married. Apparently she thought he was separated, not actively betraying his wife. She'd gone to HR, reported the relationship, and Brian was under investigation at his firm. He started showing up at the house at random times, using his key until I changed the locks. Then he'd stand in the driveway, sometimes drunk, sometimes crying, always claiming he'd made a terrible mistake. You destroyed our marriage for someone who didn't even know you were married. I asked him one night when he was particularly pathetic, swaying on the front porch. I told her we were getting divorced. Were we? When did you decide that, before or after you started sleeping with her? I was confused. The baby stuff. It was too much pressure. So you dealt with pressure by adding lies and deception to the mix. That's some interesting logic. I miss you, Mel. I miss us. There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time. You just didn't want to admit it. His firm suspended him pending the investigation. Word got out the way it always does in small legal communities. Brian Fitzgerald, rising star, caught billing personal hotel rooms to corporate accounts while conducting an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. My mother, who'd extended her stay indefinitely, took particular pleasure in his downfall. Karma, she said, sipping wine while we watched him load boxes into his car from his office. It comes for everyone eventually. Amy organized a divorce shower, which was apparently a thing now. Friends brought wine and stories of their own terrible exes. Someone gave me a journal labeled New Beginnings, and another friend brought painting supplies, having heard I wanted to start again, to Melanie. Amy toasted, who had the strength to leave and the wisdom to know she deserved better. But the most unexpected support came from Brian's own mother. She called one afternoon while I was packing his things. "Melanie, dear, I heard about everything. I'm so ashamed of my son." "It's not your fault, Patricia. I raised him better than this. His father would be rolling in his grave. That boy was given everything, including a wonderful wife, and he threw it away for what? Some office fling. I appreciate you saying that. I want you to know you'll always be family to me. Brian might be my son, but that doesn't mean I have to like him right now, or speak to him. I've told him not to call until he's done some serious soul-searching." The conversation was a gift I didn't know I needed. Even his own mother saw the truth. One evening, after a particularly brutal mediation session where Brian tried to claim I owed him alimony because his suspension affected his earning potential, I arrived at the coffee shop ready to scream. Marcus took one look at me and locked the door behind us. That bad. He wants spousal support. Can you believe it? He cheats, gets suspended from his job for fraud, and somehow I should pay him. The audacity is impressive. Susan laughed, actually laughed in his lawyer's face, said it was the most ridiculous claim she'd heard in 20 years of practice. Marcus handed me an espresso perfectly pulled. "You need something stronger than coffee." He disappeared into the back office and returned with a bottle of whiskey. Emergency supplies. We sat on the floor behind the counter, backs against the wall, passing the bottle between us. The shop was dark except for the streetlights filtering through the windows, and I felt safe in a way I hadn't in years. "Can I ask you something?" I said, emboldened by whiskey and exhaustion. "Anything. Why haven't you kissed me?" Marcus turned to look at me, his expression serious. "Because when I kiss you, and I will kiss you, I want it to be because you want me, not because you're trying to forget him." "What if I'm already forgetting him? Then we're getting closer to that kiss." I leaned my head on his shoulder and he put his arm around me. We sat like that for an hour, not talking, just existing in the same space. It was more intimate than anything I'd shared with Brian in the last year of our marriage. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said eventually. "My ex Natalie, she called yesterday. My brother left her for someone else. Karma, right? How do you feel about that?" Vindicated. Sad for her, oddly enough. And grateful. Grateful. If they hadn't betrayed me, I'd never have moved here, opened this shop, met you. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. I thought about that as we cleaned up and he walked me to my car. The worst thing, the implosion of my marriage, had led me here. To this moment with this man who saw me clearly and still wanted to be near me. "Marcus," I said as he opened my car door, "I'm getting there. The forgetting him, remembering me part. I'm getting there." He smiled, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "I know. I can wait." The divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in May, 6 months after Marcus first approached me in that parking lot. I got the house, my car, and half our assets. Brian got his precious golf clubs, his luxury sedan, and a reputation in tatters. Susan Martinez had been brilliant, particularly when she discovered Brian had been having affairs throughout our marriage. The Stephanie situation wasn't his first indiscretion, just his sloppiest. A forensic accountant found dating app subscriptions going back 5 years, hotel charges, dinner receipts. The man I'd thought I knew had been a serial cheater from year 7 on. "At least now you know it was never about you," Susan said as we left the courthouse. "Some people are just incapable of fidelity." Brian tried to approach me on the courthouse steps. He looked terrible, weight loss bags under his eyes, cheap suit instead of his usual designer wear. His firm had officially terminated him, and word was he was moving to Boston to start over where his shame wasn't common knowledge. "Mel, can we talk?" "Just for a minute." "There's nothing to say, Brian. I loved you. In my way, I did love you. Your way of loving was toxic. I deserve better than your way. And you think you'll find it with him, your coffee shop boyfriend?" I hadn't told Brian about Marcus, but of course he knew. Small towns, smaller circles. Whether I do or don't is none of your concern anymore. I made mistakes, but 12 years should count for something. They do. They count as 12 years I'll never get back. Goodbye, Brian. I walked away, heels clicking on the wet pavement, and didn't look back. My mother was waiting in the car, ready to take me to lunch to celebrate my freedom. But first, I had one stop to make. The daily grind was busy with the lunch rush, but Marcus saw me immediately. His face lit up, then shifted to concern when he saw my expression. How did it go? It's done. Official. I'm divorced. He came around the counter, ignoring the line of customers. How are you feeling? Free. Sad. Relieved. Everything at once. That seems about right. He studied my face. Do you want to get out of here? My assistant manager can handle the rush. Yes, please. We drove to the lake at the edge of town, parked and walked along the shore. The rain had stopped, leaving everything fresh and clean. I told him about Brian's attempt to talk about the discoveries of his serial cheating, about the strange grief of mourning something that never really existed. I wasted so much time trying to save something that was already dead. I said, throwing a rock into the water. Not wasted. You learned. You grew. You discovered your strength. I discovered I was an idiot. Marcus stopped walking, turned me to face him. You were a woman who loved her husband and tried to save her marriage. That's not idiotic, that's human. The idiot is the man who had you and chose to throw you away. We stood there inches apart, and I knew this was it. The moment we'd been building toward for months. Marcus. Yeah. I'm not trying to forget him anymore. I already have. All I think about is you. He cupped my face in his hands, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. Are you sure? Because once I kiss you, I'm not going to want to stop. Then don't stop. The kiss was everything. First kisses should be soft and tentative, then deeper and more certain. It was nothing like kissing Brian, all technique and routine. This was discovery and promise and heat that spread from my lips to my toes. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. Worth the wait? I asked. Worth everything. We walked back to the car, holding hands, and I felt 17 and 70 at the same time. Young with possibility, old with wisdom. So what happens now? I asked as he drove me back to my car. Now we date. Properly. Dinner, movies, long talks over coffee. I court you the way you should have been courted all along. Court? How delightfully old-fashioned. I'm a delightfully old-fashioned guy. I believe in taking time, building foundations, earning trust. Brian rushed everything. We were engaged within a year, married within 2. And how did that work out? I laughed. Point taken. I want to know your middle name, your favorite season, why you chose watercolors over oils. I want to know if you're a morning person or night owl, whether you like pineapple on pizza, what makes you laugh until you cry. Elizabeth Autumn, because watercolors are forgiving. Night owl, forced to be a morning person, absolutely yes, and videos of people falling into wedding cakes. He grinned. See, already learning important things. Did you know you have a dimple just on your left cheek when you really smile? I'd forgotten I had dimples at all. Well, I plan to make you smile enough that you never forget again. Over the next 6 months, Marcus was true to his word. He courted me with a persistence and patience that made me feel like I was worth the effort. Dinners at tiny restaurants I'd never heard of, each one better than the last. Afternoons at art galleries where he asked genuine questions about technique and composition. Sunset walks by the lake that became our special place. He met my mother, who approved immediately. Now this one, she said after he left from Sunday dinner. This one has eyes the proper distance apart. My sister Laura flew in from California and conducted what she called the brother-in-law interview over drinks. Intentions, she asked Marcus point blank. Entirely honorable, with eventual dishonorable hopes. Timeline, whatever Melanie needs. Stance on children. Would love them, have accepted it might not happen, perfectly happy either way, as long as I'm with your sister. You hurt her, I hurt you. Clear. Crystal. Laura turned to me after he went to get another round. Marry this one. Slow down. We're just dating. Melanie, that man looks at you like you hung the moon. Brian looked at you like you were blocking the TV. She wasn't wrong. Marcus's attention never wavered. When I talked, he listened. When I painted, he sat quietly reading, occasionally looking up to smile at me. When the fertility grief hit at unexpected moments, he held me without trying to fix it. You would have been an amazing mother, he said one night after I'd broken down seeing a pregnancy announcement on social media. But you're already amazing as you are. We made love for the first time on a snowy December evening 8 months after the divorce. I'd been nervous, self-conscious about my body, about being with someone new after 13 years. But Marcus treated me like I was precious. Took his time, whispered things that made me blush and then made me bold. Afterward, lying in his bed above the coffee shop, I traced patterns on his chest. What are you thinking? He asked. That I didn't know it could be like this. Not just the sex everything. Being seen, valued, wanted for exactly who I am. That's because Brian was an idiot. You have to stop calling my ex-husband an idiot. Why? Because it's offensive to idiots. He was something worse. He was cruel. Marcus pulled me closer. He was broken. Some people break others trying to fix themselves. But you didn't let him break you. I came close. Close doesn't count. You survived. You healed. You opened your heart again. That takes real courage. We moved in together the following spring. Not into my house, too many ghosts, or his apartment too small. We found a cottage near the lake with a sunroom perfect for painting and a kitchen big enough for both of us to cook without colliding. Brian had moved to Boston as planned, started at a new firm that didn't know his history. He sent me an email on what would have been our 14th anniversary. Just one line, "I'm sorry for everything." I deleted it without responding. Some chapters don't deserve epilogues. Marcus proposed on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 year after my divorce was finalized. We were at the lake, our place, when he got down on one knee. Melanie Elizabeth, you walked into my coffee shop broken and beautiful. You've let me watch you rebuild yourself into someone even more extraordinary. I promise to love you, support your dreams, make you laugh, and never ever take you for granted. Will you marry me? The ring was perfect, a vintage sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. Not traditional, not what anyone would expect. Exactly right. Yes, absolutely yes. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony by the lake. My mother cried. Laura threatened Marcus one more time for good measure, and Emma, Marcus's daughter, welcomed me officially to the family. Dad's been happier this last year than I've ever seen him, she said. Thank you for that. He saved me too. Maybe you saved each other. As we danced our first dance to Van Morrison's Into the Mystic, Marcus whispered in my ear, "Thank you." For what? For being brave enough to listen to a stranger in a parking lot. I laughed, remembering that day, how his hands shook as he showed me those photos, how my world tilted and reformed. Thank you for being brave enough to tell me the truth. Did you ever think we'd end up here? No, I thought my life was over. Turns out it was just beginning. Brian sent a wedding gift, surprisingly. A beautiful set of watercolor brushes with a note, "For your new chapter, be happy." It was the kindest thing he'd done in years. I donated the brushes to the community art center and didn't think about him again. Life with Marcus was everything marriage should be. Partnership, laughter, challenge, growth. We opened a second location of the daily grind with me managing the business side while he handled the coffee art. I painted every morning, sold pieces at local galleries, taught watercolor classes on weekends. We tried for children, but it didn't happen. The difference was, with Marcus, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like life taking us where we were meant to go. We talked about adoption, fostering, or just being the best aunt and uncle to our various nieces and nephews. Whatever happens, we're enough, Marcus said, and I believed him. One day, 3 years after our wedding, I was working in the original coffee shop when a familiar face walked in. Stephanie Bryan's former paralegal, looking older and tired. She recognized me immediately, frozen in the doorway. Melanie, I didn't know you worked here. I own it with my husband. What can I get you? I wanted to apologize. For everything. I didn't know he was married when it started. He told me you were separated. I know. It wasn't your fault. It was, though. I should have asked more questions, done my research. I was young and stupid and flattered by his attention. I handed her a vanilla latte on the house. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Did you learn from it? I looked around the coffee shop at the life I'd built from the ashes of my old one. At Marcus teaching a customer about pour-over techniques, his face animated with passion. At my paintings on the walls, the business I co-owned, the woman I'd become. I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be a gift. Brian's affair freed me to find real love. She left with her coffee and a lot to think about. I never saw her again, but I hoped she found her own happiness somewhere. That evening, as Marcus and I closed the shop together, he asked about the encounter with Stephanie. How did it feel seeing her again? Like looking at a character from a book I read long ago. Important to the plot, but not to my life now. No anger. No. If anything, I'm grateful. If Brian hadn't cheated with her, if you hadn't told me, I'd still be in that house trying to save something that was already dead. Marcus pulled me close, kissed the top of my head. Remind me to send her a thank you card. We laughed, locked up, and walked home hand in hand. The lake sparkled in the sunset, and I thought about how far I'd come from that day in the parking lot when my world fell apart. Some people come into your life to teach you what love isn't. Brian taught me that love wasn't criticism disguised as concern, absence explained as ambition, or cruelty justified as honesty. He taught me that love wasn't making yourself smaller to fit someone else's life. Marcus taught me what love was. Love was coffee made exactly right without asking. Love was sitting quietly while someone painted. Love was hard conversations and gentle truths and laughter that came from your belly. Love was being seen, really seen, and being chosen anyway. Every single day. That stranger who warned me about my husband's affair, he became my husband, my best friend, my true partner. He saw me at my absolute worst, broken and betrayed, and somehow saw something worth waiting for. We've been married 7 years now. The coffee shops are thriving, my art career has taken off, and we're happy in a way I didn't know was possible. Not the Facebook perfect happiness I used to perform with Brian, but real happiness. The kind that includes arguments about dishwasher loading tears over hard days and dancing in the kitchen at midnight just because. Sometimes customers ask how we met, and Marcus always smiles. I had to deliver some difficult news to her, and she handled it with such grace that I fell in love on the spot. It's not the whole truth, but it's enough truth. The whole story is ours, a reminder that endings can be beginnings, that broken hearts can heal stronger, and that sometimes a stranger in a parking lot can change your entire life. Brian remarried 2 years ago to someone who looks nothing like me or Stephanie. I heard through mutual friends that he seems different, maybe changed by his losses. I hope he has. Everyone deserves a chance to grow from their mistakes. But I don't think about him much anymore. My life is too full, too rich, too complete to waste time on what was. I have Marcus, our shops, my art, our families, and a future that spreads out before us like a canvas waiting for color. The last painting I sold was of a coffee shop, warm light spilling from the windows. 2 figures visible inside, leaning toward each other over steaming cups. The buyer asked what it was called. Second Chances, I told her. She smiled. There's a story there. There always is. Looking back, would I change anything? Would I erase Brian's betrayal, the pain, the humiliation? No. Because every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of despair led me here. To this life, this love, this version of myself who is brave and whole and finally truly happy. They say, the best revenge is living well. I disagree. The best revenge is living authentically fully without regard for the person who hurt you. It's forgetting to think about them at all, because your life is too beautiful to look backward. That stranger in the parking lot didn't just warn me my husband was cheating. He showed me I was worth more than crumbs of affection. He taught me that real love doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit. He proved that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one. And when he asked me out for coffee after destroying my world, I said yes. It was the best yes of my life. To anyone watching who's been betrayed, who's had their world shattered by someone they trusted, know this: the pain you're feeling is real and valid, but it's not permanent. You will survive this. You will heal. And someday when you least expect it, someone will see you, really see you, and you'll understand why it never worked with anyone else. Trust your instincts. Red flags are warnings, not decorations. Better to be alone than with someone who makes you feel alone. And sometimes, just sometimes, the stranger who brings bad news might just be the angel you've been waiting for. My name is Melanie. I'm 41 years old now, and I'm living proof that the worst day of your life might just be the beginning of everything you've ever wanted. You just have to be brave enough to say yes when possibility knocks, even if it comes disguised as disaster. Love isn't supposed to hurt. It's supposed to heal. Remember that and never settle for less than someone who sees you as the miracle you are. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, I hope it gives you hope, strength, or at least the courage to trust your gut when something feels wrong. What did you think of my journey? Have you ever had a stranger change your life in an unexpected way? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that endings can be beautiful beginnings. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of heartbreak, healing, and hope. Until next time, remember, you're worthy of real love, the kind that adds to your life instead of subtracting from it. Be brave, be true, and never be afraid to start over.